So, Doctor Who has changed a lot of people's lives, myself included, and a certain best friend of mine, but that's not important. And Doctor Who famously was cancelled quite a while ago, a couple decades ago now, back during the beloved 1980s. I'm just kidding. The 1980s were a great time. Queen performing at Live Aid, Batman releasing, being directed by Tim Burton, other things. I know nothing of the 1980s except Doctor Who, and Queen for that matter. Anyway, so today's video is actually going to talk about the cancelled Series 27. Now, of course, Series 27 was going to be the series if Doctor Who had not been cancelled after 1989. The main reason Doctor Who was cancelled back in the 80s was because of the failing ratings, and that's because of a certain man named Michael Grade. Who's Michael Grade, I hear you ask? He's the man who ruined Doctor Who in the 80s. For one thing, he kicked the show 4 times before it was killed off. He put the show on hiatus for around 18 months. He sacked Colin Baker from the role of the Doctor, mainly because he didn't like him. That's an odd reason to sack someone. You don't like them. And again, Michael Grade probably didn't even like Doctor Who. And for another thing, he's the reason for the show's failing ratings, because he scheduled Doctor Who up against Coronation Street, one of the famous TV soaps. So obviously that's going to harm the ratings massively. However, if Series 27 was commissioned, it would have shook up everything in a new way. For one thing, Ace, I'm not sure if she has a last name, not much of an expert on classic Doctor Who, would have left the Doctor to become a Time Lord. Don't know how that would actually work, but sure, you do you, Ace. And the next companion would have been a cat burglar. Think Christina D'Souza from Planet of the Dead, but in the classic era. That's basically what we're working with. And at the end of Series 27, Sylvester McCoy would have regenerated. So, if Series 27 were commissioned, then it would have been McCoy's last as the Doctor. And here's where things get a lot more interesting. The actor after McCoy was going to be Richard Griffiths. And if that name sounds familiar, that's because he played Vernon Dursley in Harry Potter. That's right. Vernon Dursley was going to be the Doctor after Sylvester McCoy. However, the show was cancelled in 1989, which led to the eventual release of the TV movie a couple of years later. And this is actually when McCoy regenerated in our main Doctor Who timeline that we know today. But would Series 27 have been actually pretty good? If the viewing figures of the season where Doctor Who was cancelled or anything to go by, it's most likely it could have been good. I mean, Michael Grade did a lot of stuff to run Doctor Who into the ground, but it's most likely he should have left when he could. He should have just left the BBC. I mean, they should have said, Michael, if you don't like Doctor Who, then don't work on it. And then reins probably would have been handed over to someone else then. And sure, if Michael Grade never worked on it, then Doctor Who would have continued after 1989, gone right through the 90s, and probably would have continued to this day. Although, it's kind of good that the 1996 movie actually happened. Side note, I've watched the Doctor Who TV movie a couple of times. I mean, it's not great, it's not bad. I mean, it's alright, there are some okay moments. I mean, Eric Roberts puts in an affordable performance as the Master, and Paul McGann is severely underrated as the Doctor. It is really a shame that he didn't get his own series. And here's an interesting fact. What many people don't know is that the TV movie was actually intended as a backdoor pilot for a US-produced continuation of the series. And if the TV movie was good, then there would have been a couple of seasons at the least of McGann being the Doctor. However, one thing that I find a shame is that McGann wasn't asked back for the 2005 reboot, which was being developed by Russell T Davies. Now, there were actually a couple of different showrunners in the running for Doctor Who. Now, I can't exactly remember who they were. I believe one of them was now series veteran Mark Gatiss, who of course played Professor Lazarus in the Lazarus Experiment, a severely underrated Doctor Who episode in my opinion. It's actually pretty good. And a lot of things would have been shaken up. In terms of the TV movie, things would have been shaken up massively canon-wise. Okay, back to the different showrunners. In one case, the showrunner would have pitched a more gothic run, and Richard E. Grant was also going to be the Doctor. In fact, famously, a lot of people may not know this, but Scream of the Shalka was actually a web-produced episode, if you will, that introduced the Shalka Doctor, as now dubbed by Doctor Who fans, because the Shalka Doctor was originally made to resemble Richard E. Grant because he was in the running to play the next Doctor. However, the role instead went to Christopher Eccleston, who I don't think was known for relatively much before Doctor Who actually happened. And it's good that it did, because Christopher Eccleston pretty much got his big break. I know nothing of Christopher Eccleston's work outside of Doctor Who, other than the fact that he was Malekith in Thor the Dark World. So it's also pretty good that Russell T Davies actually was steering the reboot shit of Doctor Who. Yes, I'm calling it a reboot. There is almost nothing connected to the canon except the villains. Well, mainly the Daleks, Cybermen, Sontaran, and Solaria. I am not going into this right now. I may do another video on my favourite Doctor Who villains at some point in the future. Or the past. Wink. I need to come up with some new jokes. Anyway, what do you guys think? Would you have wanted to see Doctor Who continue past the 80s? Would you have wanted to see a continuation of the series after the TV movie, if it turned out to be good? And most importantly, would Richard Griffiths have been a good Doctor? Not so sure. He probably would have stayed for maybe 2 seasons, maybe 3, because eventually he probably would have been cast as Vernon Dursley. I mean, it's most likely he probably would stay for a couple of seasons, maybe in the 90s, he probably would stay for a couple of serials, maybe for seasons 28, 29, and 30, if season 27 was ever commissioned. And then we probably would have gotten another Doctor who probably would stay for a couple more serials then, and so on and so forth. Which would mean that any actors in New Who would not have been cast as the Doctor. Sorry to David Tennant and Peter Capaldi, who were massive Who fans during the classic era. And if you want my opinion, it sounds fairly interesting. I mean, a Shalka Doctor would be pretty cool. But we only have Scream of the Shalka, and yeah. So, before I say goodbye and sign off on this video, I just wanted to give you guys a quick update. So, at the time of this recording, Batman the Fan Series has officially been completed, and I wanted to hear from you guys about what I should do next. I'll be doing a video in the future about some animation projects I've been pondering over for a bit, and I want to get your opinion, because it sounds fairly interesting for you guys to give your opinions on certain videos, and I'll do a video explaining in depth about the animation projects I've actually got in the works. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.